Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The 2024 Level Blue Futures Report sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business contexts that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today. Visit securityweekly.com/levelblue. Cybersecurity simplified. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. We've got Dr. Dustin Sachs with us as an emergency co-host. Hello, Dustin. How are you?
Hey, Adrian. How are you?
I am pretty good. I appreciate you swooping in on short notice. Don't even have a cape, but you're the superhero we needed right now.
Yeah, well, it helps that the company that puts this on pays my check, so I kind of have to show up.
That does help, but yeah, you could have had a conflict. So I think bit of luck there, and you happen to see our messages, so we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And just earlier today, I was listening to you on the CISO Stories podcast.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. Obviously we're talking tool selection a lot here at CRA this month, and that happened to be kind of the area that I did my doctoral research on. So it worked.
Okay.
It worked out really well.
Great. Yeah, and that will come up in the news today. But more or less on this show, we can skip around. Like if it makes more sense to do that, I try and put them in an order that makes sense. But we don't have to. We don't even have to cover everything here. Though I used to have 25, 30 stories here. I've really cut back. I've been working hard to, get it to, something where we can actually cover everything in the show notes.
I definitely think number 9 is a good one, because I actually have a pretty good idea, or at least suspicion, as to what the motive might have been on that one.
Yeah, me too. And if you want to know, like when we refer to number 9, you can check out securityweekly.com/ESW380. That will take you to the show notes that we're looking at, and you'll be able to see number 9 is the Internet Archive getting hacked. So yeah, we will definitely talk about that one. But first, we usually cover funding, and a bunch of companies got funding, but these are the ones I felt were interesting enough to talk about. Human, this was not a number or letter funding. It wasn't a Series A, Series B, Series C. This is the company that was previously White Source. Is that the name of it? White. So this is where what's the DNS guy's name that died a few years ago? Very sadly. I'm blanking on all kinds of stuff today.
Not Kevin Mitnick, right?
No. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but no, I mean, yeah, I saw this story actually, and I think it's interesting because Dan
Kaminsky.
Oh yes, Dan Kaminsky. Yes, yeah. So I saw this one, and this one I know came on the heels of OpenAI getting a whole bunch of funding a couple weeks ago, and I think it's kind of indicative of hopefully a softening in the market when it comes to spending and venture capital, and kind of a return to some level of normalcy. Because
I think
we're now seeing investment.
Oh yeah, we've definitely seen it. So we cover funding every week, so we keep tabs on that, and it's come back pretty strong. The place where we did not see come back were the Series C and D. We've only seen a select few of those. So a lot of VCs spending on brand new companies, a lot of
Yeah.
seed and Series A and really big seed rounds. We've seen $30-35 million seed rounds. But it really does make me wonder more about the series, the mid to later stage. And honestly, that's where we've been seeing most of the acquisitions. So we think a lot of those guys got cut off and had to go find a deal.
Well, and I think as well, I mean, we're seeing some pretty crazy valuations as well for some of these companies. And I always wonder, to what extent is it kind of overvalued, or, at what point are we going to kind of hit that point where we go, you know what, we've been overvaluing so many things, kind of the housing bubble kind of
Well,
equivalent
that's
of
the
all of a
correction we
sudden.
saw here,
Yeah.
right? Like we saw, what was the EDR vendor, the cyber reason,
Right.
uh, got an order magnitude. They went from a valuation of like 2.8 billion to 250 million or something like that. And we saw IronNet go away.
Right.
So a few of the SPAC companies that went public via SPAC didn't do too well. And then the other big one was what was the Wiz and Orca competitor that they were talking about a fire sale about Wiz actually acquiring them.
Laceworks.
Yeah, Lacework. Yeah, but
Yeah.
instead they get acquired by somebody else, and my brain is just okay.
Yeah.
So
No,
to
I mean, it's,
follow up with the earlier ones, Human used to be White Ops. White
right.
Source rebranded to Mend, but White Ops rebranded to Human, so they call themselves Human now. But anti bot company. So AppSec, stop bots on your website type of product here.
Yeah, and I think the second one, the Reliance AI one, is an interesting one as well, because we were actually we had our CISO stories webcast today, and the CISO that we had on, or the security leader we had on, we were talking about this idea of innovation and bringing tools in to help innovate. And when you talk about a company that literally they raised $32 million in Series B for the sole purpose of helping safeguard AI innovation, I think that it seems to be that the ones that are getting the outrageous kind of valuations are still around the AI concept. And I feel like
There's too
it's,
many of them.
yeah,
There's
there is too many of them. And I wonder, like, it's been now a good, let's say, 20 months since Chat GPT came out on the market,
yeah.
and I feel like it at some point this AI race is going to we're going to come to a point where it's just going to crash, and we're going to start seeing companies that can't get funding anymore.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, we were looking at in one of the previous shows, we are looking at the valuations of the companies, NVIDIA, Microsoft, whose valuations went up because of AI.
Right.
And we were trying to do the calculations on how much Copilot Microsoft would have to sell to justify the change in the public market. And it's just impossible. Like there's not enough, like you can't sell enough AI to justify the amount of investment and spending that's been put on it. So yeah, I think you're right. There will have to be a correction. And Reliance is interesting. It's in this, I've gone through and categorized all the AI startups, and they're in this category where they don't really do anything with AI specifically, but because generative AI specifically creates so many problems around data, they're focused on the data governance, data hygiene, privacy issues, where if companies want to use generative AI internally, they really have to get their stuff together on where the data is, making sure it's labeled, making sure sensitive stuff isn't going to be popping out of people's prompts in the output, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's, again, kind of interesting that you bring that up, because at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, at the CISO and security leader community here at CRA, we're actually currently running a task force, an 6-week task force, focusing on how to prepare and how to bring in generative AI to the organization. We were literally this past week talking about this exact topic of how do you bring in the AI in a safe manner, and then to see these kind of stories coming out at the exact same time is just validates, I think, a lot of what the conversations that CISOs and security leaders are having right now, and what I keep hearing them talk about every day when I interact with them. So.
Yeah, and we've seen some others. I think Zendata would be a competitor here.
Yeah.
There's a few others on my list here that are focused. Redactive is another one.
Right.
That are kind of focused on solving the data problem to make it easier to adopt AI.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and data's tough. Data's messy. Data's everywhere. Any company beyond a certain size, data's just a hot mess for them.
Security is hard. Security is hard. It's not.
And then watchTowr here. This is a Singapore-based cybersecurity startup, and they say it's breach and attack simulation, which is a term we haven't seen a whole lot. It looks like they're doing some kind of pen testing automation, but I found it interesting because they're talking about the history of the company here. It was founded by hacker turned entrepreneur Benjamin Harris, whom I haven't heard of, but they say he's built a remarkable profile in the cybersecurity industry over 14 years after having hacked into his school network at the age of 16.
Everybody's trying to be Kevin Mitnick. Everybody's trying to be Kevin Mitnick.
I thought it was interesting. They would include. It seems kind of passé to include that in the press release, though. Like I'm not sure that's impressing anybody anymore. Like that's
yeah, exactly.
We have a whole generation where how I got into security is I just started hacking stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, and fortunately I didn't get arrested and turned it into a career.
The joke with several of the 3-letter government agencies in the U.S. was the only way to apply for the job was to get arrested by them. So,
right.
It is interesting to certainly see these, hackers, reformed hackers, try to start these companies. It's certainly interesting. So,
yeah. All right. So the next one here, I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on this. It's kind of talking about, do you have to come from an IT background, a technical background? Do you have to have been a pen tester or done vulnerability management or something like that to be in the CISO chair? And the idea that particularly in some companies where the CISO role is really more of a high level strategy governance type role, do you maybe need more of a business person in that seat than a technical person? Maybe the deputy CISO or the what do they call it, head of staff, chief of staff. Like there's these other roles that kind of help out the CISO, where maybe you have a more technical person, and the CISO themselves is could have a history in HR or something like that. Like it's because so much of the job is politics and going to meetings and stuff like that, it's an interesting idea, getting more diversity in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is obviously a topic that gets discussed quite a bit amongst our CISO community and amongst the CISOs in general. And there's been this push over the last, 5-6 years to start taking this mindset of, you need to be better. You almost need to be better at business than you are at tech. You have to be able to talk in the language of the business. You have to be able to talk in the language of, the financial implications, and tell that story of security better. And many of the traditional CISOs come from a technical role where they're not able to speak that language. It's almost the equivalent of going from speaking, German to speaking Russian. Like it's such a colossal language shift. So it's interesting because there's been discussion as well about this idea of, do you have kind of split the role and have a technical CISO and a business CISO now all of a sudden, and you actually make two roles out of it? And I think that's a tricky one. I think that, you know, you're when we sit here and talk about all of the different ways to get into security, there are so many different avenues now compared to, 20 years ago when I was coming into the industry, where you could really only get in if you were in law enforcement or if you were in consulting, and if you were in forensics or e-discovery, that was kind of the only way to really get in there if you weren't in law enforcement. And now you've got GRC, you've got audit, you've got, all of these other ways that you can get into the industry. And, as I mentor, the up and comers through the industry, I tell them, you got to have some legal knowledge. You've got to have some understanding of product development and what your business actually does, because you can't create the right protection that you need if you don't understand what your business is doing. And that doesn't necessarily require a technical background. It just requires understanding what your business does. And really, it's about building relationships, which is, as the CISO, you're really just a risk advisor. So you've got, it's all about impact and influence and less about technical. Most CISOs are not hands on the keyboard every day. So after a while, they lose a lot of that, just that
right.
muscle
Even
memory.
if you had it, you can lose it over time too. Even if you were technical at one point. Yeah.
I worked for a CISO, prior to coming to Cyber Risk Collaborative, that would admit on a regular basis that it had been 5, 6, 7, 8 years since he had had his hands on a keyboard. And he's led, he'd been the CISO at multiple large, well-known organizations. And he's really good at what he does because he can talk in the language of the people who are not technical and tell that story. So I think that there's a lot to be said about this move away from the technical CISO to the business leader CISO.
And we talked about this in the first interview, which I know you didn't hear, with Teresa Lanowitz. We talked a lot about how risk isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's something. Risk can kill your company. Like not getting risky enough. You can talk about like Blockbuster and BlackBerry, and how they had to pivot or went out of business. So for the business, risk is a tool. I think we've traditionally overvalued reducing risk in cybersecurity.
Well,
to where obviously a lot of companies get away with quite a bit of risk and do just fine. I think Dropbox has had 7 breaches. Does anybody remember that? Like, is that,
Well, and I mean, not to jump ahead, but we're going to talk about, hopefully talk about, a fine for a company who had 3 breaches in, 17, 18 months. And I haven't seen their business hurting at all. So,
So cybersecurity isn't priority number 1, but certainly it needs to be priority somewhere, right? We're just not
absolutely.
sure. And maybe it's different for every business.
And to your point, I think we forget as practitioners and as individuals that we live with risk every day in our daily life. I mean, when you get in the car, the statistics that are out there.
Or if you get on a motorcycle, that's a lot of risk.
Or if you get on a motorcycle, I mean, your risk, no one thinks twice about getting on a car, getting on a motorcycle and driving off. And yet, if you ask people what are they most scared of, it's getting on an airplane, and the statistics
or
about
sharks.
the risk of an airplane crashing compared to a car accident are, astronomically different. And we live with risk every day, and we don't think about it in most cases, even though most of the risk we face is, very much presented to us every minute of every day. So.
It's a very emotional thing, because I think it's 2 different questions to say, what are you most scared of? And what's the most risky thing that you do? Because the most risky thing you do is not the thing you're most scared of, because, fear is not logical. You know, it's
actually
it's an emotional.
It's interesting, and going to my doctoral research, one of the things that I really enjoyed learning about was what's known as the Peltzman effect, and it's this concept that we as humans believe that if we've got some sort of safety net, we're safer, and therefore we're more willing to take risk.
Yeah.
So you're more willing to walk across a tightrope as long as there's a net below you.
Yeah.
Even though it's just as risky as if there's no net there. So, it's interesting that when it comes to cyber risk, we have such a lack of appreciation and a lack of understanding of it.
So. Yeah. It's humans are notoriously bad at making risk. Judging risk without something to, kind of calculate that for them
I got
adjust
for the. I got my doctorate because of this. Yeah, absolutely. So
there's so many inherent biases in everything that we do, all the decisions we make. And among those, the next story here. So I used to work for Thinks. So a little disclaimer there, but they're kind of famous for sharing down to the penny the value they get out of their RSA and Black Hat booths. So a few years ago, they literally shared the cost sheet of what they paid for airplane tickets to send people over there, to staff the booth, like everything. And so this is just an update in a whole series they've done. I think this is the third one they've done on this. But I love it because it's not just, how to make a good booth from a vendor perspective and how to ensure that you're actually getting value out of it. Because again, you see a lot of people, I think, doing the wrong things here where, you go to a booth and there's some kind of gimmick going on. Like I've seen vendors have actors literally boxing, like they had a boxing ring on the RSA show floor. But can I get a demo of your product? Can I see your product? Can I ask questions about? No. Like, I can't get information about what you do. It seems like a miss to me,
And I definitely have to shout out, the Cyber Risk Alliance. This is one of those areas where really Cyber Risk Alliance has kind of excelled and is one of the, if not the leader, one of the leaders in North America when it comes to putting on conferences and doing this. Actually, this past week, we issued a kind of a guidance document about how to, effectively create a program that accounts for, diversity of individuals, diversity by gender, how to create an inclusive event for people who are neurodiverse, people who have autism or ADD or ADHD or any number of things. And it's really great when you can create an event that is inclusive and everybody feels welcome. And this is something that, quite frankly, CRA has excelled at over the years. And this guidance document, which is now available and is actually publicly available, is a really great kind of addendum even and a kind of supplement to what we're talking about here, which is not only do you need to look at it from a cost standpoint, but also just are you doing the things that are going to keep bringing people back?
Yeah. And I run events. So I've run B-Sides Knoxville for 10 years now. And it's really important to keep focus on those fundamental things that matter to your attendees, because it's so easy to get distracted, both in terms of spending budget on things that don't matter, like fancy swag things and electronic badges. And like, there's so many distractions that can take you away from the core of what an event or, having a booth should be. Like, again, with a booth, like as a customer, I just want to learn more about your product. And so many booths, they're so focused on the gimmicks and the swag and the gadgets and stuff like that, just so that they can scan your badge. And what do you end up with? You end up with a list of leads of people who are really interested in that gadget that you're giving away, not people who are interested in spending money on your product.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we just had CRA just put on InfoSec World in Orlando, and one of the things
Yep.
that I observed, and I posted an article on LinkedIn about this, is one of the things that organizations, if you're creating a booth or you're putting on a conference or whatever, that you should be looking to foster is what I termed hallway therapy. The sessions,
Yeah.
the
Hallway
best
con.
sessions the best sessions are the ones that are happening in between the actual conference sessions, where
Yeah.
people are sitting in the hallway laughing and joking and
And you
standing
need to
around a
make sure
booth.
there are seating, there are spaces for that to happen, where they're not going to disturb the talks. Like that's a really
Right.
important
But
part.
but
Like
not
when I'm
only that,
choosing a
but
venue, I'm thinking
yeah.
like, where's hallway track going to happen? Because it can't be right here because it's going to interrupt the speaker. So that's something you look for when you look at a venue.
Well, and not only that, but pulling people into your booth so that they can have those conversations
Mm-hmm.
that are organic are really, really valuable. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time on the exhibitor floor at InfoSec World and got to
Yeah.
see the ones that were doing the best. Yeah, they maybe had a gimmick. I mean, one of them had a
Sure.
frozen coffee machine, frozen
Gimmick's fine as
drink,
long as you haven't lost sight of the core goal, right?
Of course, of course. So yeah, no, it's definitely an
And
important
coffee's
one.
always like that's never a bad idea.
Of course, never a bad idea, and it really drives and helps drive the conferences that we all set aside budget for. And I know we're about to talk budget. It are the ones that we feel like we get the most value because there is that communication conversation. It's not overly vendor driven, vendor pushy conferences. The ones that everybody complains about are the ones where the vendors are, they're the mall perfume person. Do you want this?
Yeah.
Do you want to try this scent kind of thing? And we never like those.
Yeah. Where you have to run the gauntlet, right?
Exactly.
You get perfume sprayed in your mouth. All right. So I don't normally promote the other Security Weekly podcasts on this one, but I just happen to be watching Business Security Weekly number 368 with Jeff Pollard from what is wrong with my brain today? From Forrester.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
From Forrester.
My brain, it was telling me to say Fortinet, but I knew that was wrong. But this is, I've listened to a lot of budget planning podcasts, but this guy just really sharp, like had some really interesting insights on like where people are spending too much. And Matt Alderman, the host of the show, was asking some really good questions. Where people need to focus more, focus less, where they're wasting their money. I didn't take notes while watching it, so I don't have any specific insights from it. But I would urge people, anybody interested in cybersecurity budget planning, should check that one out.
And especially right now, as cybersecurity budget planning is actually taking place at many organizations. So,
it is the right time. Yeah, it's a 40-minute watch. And I enjoyed the whole thing. There's a lot of good advice in there. The next one here, the 2025 CISO Perspectives Report. This is from Portnox, which is one of the NAC vendors that avoided the death of NAC many years ago. And that's interesting. Now that I'm looking at it, it's not populating the actual report data. You can get a full report, but yeah, there's some interesting insights in here, and I don't know if they intended the irony here, where they're asking about MFA, and there's a clear bias here, right? This is a NAC vendor, network access control,
right?
So they're all about zero trust, and I think they kind of think that they're throwing MFA under the bus, because they're asking people, what are your thoughts on, how many of you think MFA is the future of cybersecurity, and how many of you think MFA can't keep pace with evolving threats? Well, obviously, like, we know what the answers are going to be. Yeah, MFA isn't perfect. We know now that attackers can get around it. And then now they pitch zero trust as the future of cybersecurity. Everybody agrees. All the CISOs agree, right? Like zero trust is the best thing ever,
Right.
because we haven't seen attackers poking a bunch of holes in it yet, but that will come with time. Right. So, come back 5-10 years from now, and you're going to be talking about zero trust the same way you're talking about MFA, because no controls are perfect. No implementation of a control is perfect. Everything's going to have flaws. And I just thought that was kind of humorous to me, that, it's just very, very time biased, sure. The latest buzzword. Sure. Everybody's a fan. Yeah.
And I love what you did in the show notes with it, which was a complete series of statements. And it was, CISOs in 2015, MFA is the future of cybersecurity. CISOs in 2024, MFA can't keep pace with evolving threats. CISOs in 2024, zero trust is the future of cybersecurity. And then CISOs in 2033, and it's blank. And I
complete
think about
that statement.
I think back to, taking the law school admissions test, and I go, well, the logical answer is zero trust can't be trusted. That's probably the answer if we follow the logic of the if you're doing the which number is next in this series. I think it's going to be AI can solve our zero trust problems.
Yeah, so. There you go. Yeah, there'll be something else. Sure enough, there will be some kind of hyped up new category, buzzword, whatever. But I think there's kind of an important lesson in there that they didn't necessarily intend. But
absolutely.
The way you put together surveys, you have to be. It's so easy to bias them towards whatever results that you want, and.
Well, I mean, I had a political statistics professor in undergrad who on the first day of class was like 90% of statistics are made up on the spot. So, or 90% of statistics are right 150% of the time, so
very true.
So yeah, it can absolutely be twisted.
So shifting gears a little bit to technical stuff, there's a tool, I saw Trend Micro actually had a report out on this. The tool is not new, but Trend Micro's report on it is new. And I think that's what I linked to here. Yes, I linked to Trend Micro's report about this EDR evasion tool called, EDR Silencer. And I was, I don't normally dig into, I'm long out of my pen testing years. I could still do a pen test today if I had to, but every now and then I'm like, okay, let's see what the latest red team tools look like. Let's see what they're doing. And, I was thinking, okay, how are they bypassing so many EDR products? Because there's a huge list. If you go to the GitHub for this EDR Silencer tool, there's this huge list of EDR tools. It's like all the EDR tools except I didn't see CrowdStrike there, but so what they're doing is they're actually just they make a list of all the EDR tools out there, what the process names are, and if they see that process name, they create a Windows packet filter to say, okay, that process can't send packets outbound anymore. So you just stop getting data from your EDR tool because they're literally blocking it with the host firewall. And
I think
it's so dumb. It's so low tech.
I think when I saw this one, I immediately thought back to the Microsoft ROT 13 encryption days. Let's create a super secure encryption method that we call ROT13, which literally stands for rotate 13. So the name itself tells you exactly what to do. Like, how do you create a cryptographic tool that literally has the name of the way to break the cipher in the tool? So I thought very similar to this. It was very kind of like surprisingly low tech.
It's just one of those XKCD like Hollywood hacking versus the $4 hit them with a wrench until they tell us the password. Like it's that all over again, where like people would debate, go look at AV test results to see what the best AV is. And when I used to pen test, and this isn't really possible anymore, there's a lot of tamper resistant features in AV tools and EDR tools these days. But back in the day, you could just net stop Symantec and it would turn off the AV service. You could do whatever you wanted, and then you could net start Symantec. I knew that sent off an alert to someone somewhere. Yeah, I knew it would generate an alert to use the nice way to turn off the AV. But I also knew nobody ever looks at that. Nobody would ever see me turn off AV on an endpoint. And that's effectively what they're doing here. Is I mean, this isn't far from NetStop Sentinel-1, NetStart Sentinel-1. But I'm amazed that something that basic works on almost all the EDR tools on the market. And it's crazy. The next one here, it shouldn't be all that surprising. Log4j, vulnerable instances of Log4j are still around 3 years later. Tech debt is really hard, especially when it's a tiny Java library that's baked into a bajillion different things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting because this is definitely something that I had a conversation with a CISO recently about, because they found it by doing some SBOM analysis, some software bill of materials analysis of some of their third-party tools, where they found that these types of vulnerabilities, and it was surprising because they found hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities like this that still exist in their tools 3 and 4 years later. So it was really interesting for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking years for vulnerabilities to get remediated. And honestly, it's because it's not creating a visible problem. If it's not, the wheel isn't squeaking, nobody's going to mess with it. They got other things to go worry about. Or maybe they're not even, well, I mean, they've got to be aware of it being in the environment. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made the reporting for this. A tool reported this. I think they use data from Sonatype. That's how we know that it's 13% of active Log4j installations are still vulnerable. So, yeah, it's just hard to, again, in security, I was talking about this with Teresa Lanowitz again. The CISO has a list that's roughly 100 times longer than what they can ever hope to accomplish. Everything's high priority, everything's critical. So yeah, how do you handle that? You need to run, Dustin?
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. I do need to run to another call.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we're almost done here, so I'll finish this out. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, absolutely,
and helping out. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Bye.
See you next time. Bye. Yeah. So we number 8 here is understanding Akira ransomware. So that's just I like to include these when they have some. First of all, very easy to read. This is from Qualys. This is one of Qualys's threat briefs. Very easy to comb through here, pull out some really useful insights in how the malware is working. I was just talking with, we're going to have a conversation with Lenny Zeltzer, I believe next week. Yeah, next week. And I did speaking of InfoSec World, I did a workshop there once where the idea was, how could you stop ransomware without any fancy tools? Like no next-gen AV, just what with Microsoft gives you with Windows. And the idea was to begin to think of malware in general as fragile, because if you think about it, whoever's created this malware, they have to make some assumptions about what your environment looks like, how to infect it, how to persist. And if you change just a few of those things, all of a sudden the malware doesn't work anymore. It can't persist. It can't install itself. Maybe it can't even run. Maybe it can't get onto the system in the first place. And so that's what we did in that workshop is we just, okay, let's run the ransomware. Okay, it worked. Okay, I'd reset the virtual environments. Now let's just change a few settings that make no impact whatsoever on your users or your environment. And let's run the ransomware. Oh, now the ransomware doesn't run. Now it doesn't work anymore. So that's why I include this, because this is giving you those kinds of insights into the limitations and the requirements and what ransomware is actually doing. That'll give you maybe some ideas on how to stop it, on how to configure your environment to where maybe you're resistant to, think of it like getting a vaccination, for example. Maybe you can make it so 50% of the malware out there doesn't work anymore because the Windows directory is in a different directory than the normal one. Like stuff as simple as that can make malware just not work anymore. So good read here. Nothing particularly makes this one special. It's just kind of a reminder to folks to go check these out every now and then and, see how easy it would be to maybe harden your environment a bit, modify your environment so that this stuff doesn't work anymore. And also very useful in detection engineering, to look at the different things they're doing for persistence, lateral movement, stuff like that. And it's the stuff you would expect. Scheduled tasks for persistence, RDP for lateral movement. There's a list of CVEs in here that it's going to try and exploit. So all good stuff to incorporate into your security program and security ops. We talked about at the beginning the Internet Archive getting hacked here. I guess it's inevitable. The Internet Archive is one of those places where they back up stuff that people would otherwise want everyone to forget, the world to forget, but the Internet Archive remembers. So that's my theory as a motive here. Like maybe they're hosting recordings or websites that people really want wiped away. And I think there is a process to request them to take down stuff. So again, I don't know why anybody would hack the Internet Archive. I feel like most people view it as a force for good. I find it very useful. So yeah, if any listeners have any guesses there, reach out. Let me know. I don't know why you would want to hack the Internet Archive. And I think they were getting hit with DDoS as well. In addition to leaking 30 something million people's data. So, the good news is no clear text passwords. They were using bcrypt. So doing some good stuff there, but yeah, they did leak some data. Marriott. So this one's interesting. If you ever want to study breaches, like I do spend some of my time going through and pulling out the details of breaches. Anytime the FTC puts together a complaint, they call it a complaint. It usually includes some really interesting details about how the breach happened, how the company failed. And this is no different. So I've actually linked in the show notes here to the complaint directly, straight to the PDF. So you can check that out. And it's a pretty easy read for a PDF from the FTC, something that looks like a legal document. But yeah, this one was particularly bad. And this breach is Marriott, who acquired Starwood. And two of the three breaches here were on Starwood, not on Marriott. The third one was totally on Marriott. So it's kind of shared responsibility for these. But a total 7 years of dwell time across all three of these breaches and these two organizations. One of them was over 4 years. It took them 4 years to discover the attack. So pretty egregious. And the fine is $52 million, which probably not a big deal for Marriott. I don't know what their annual revenue is, but check that out and see what percentage $52 million is. Probably not going to be a big amount, I would imagine. But yeah, maybe, the upside here is we get some good details out of that. I haven't dug through it entirely yet. I might include that as a separate segment later if somebody would want to see that, see a breakdown of everything they did, how they could have avoided this, how maybe they could have detected this. But yeah, nothing special I saw here, pretty typical, like any pen test that you would order would probably get in the same way that these attackers got in, exploiting unpatched vulnerabilities and stuff like that. And finally, the squirrel story for today, Fisker EVs. Already, this was kind of a dumpster fire. Fisker was going out of business, having trouble selling the rest of its Ocean SUVs, which are full EVs, I believe. And yeah, as the company's going out of business, another company, I think a car rental company, if I'm not mistaken, offered them a bunch of money, $46.3 million for their remaining inventory. So 33,000 cars, like 20 grand a car, something like that. It comes out to, and they'd already given them most of the money, $42.5 million. And only a third of the Oceans had been delivered. And Fisker said, yeah, we can't transfer the servers to you that give you control of those cars, that allow you to manage those cars. And I don't know if this is a PKI thing, if this is some kind of cryptography, cybersecurity reason that they can't transfer the servers to them. I don't understand why they couldn't just give them the servers or let them take over the servers. But now there's a lawsuit because basically Fisker's saying that they can't hand over 2,200 vehicles that had already been paid for. So already a mess of a situation as this car company is going out of business for the second time. This is the second Fisker going out of business. The first one got acquired by a Chinese company and survives under a different name. But just amazing to fail a car company twice and in such a dramatic way. That's why this made our squirrel story for today. All right. With that, big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks again to Dr. Dustin Sachs for joining me for the news segment today. And next week, as I mentioned, we'll be talking to Lenny Zeltzer about transforming the defender's dilemma into the defender's advantage. And we'll have some recorded interviews from Okta's Octane conference. See you then.